On today's Murder, She Wrote podcast, Murder takes the bus with a who's who of classic films and 80s television stars. Hello and welcome to the Murder, She Wrote podcast, where I watch every single episode that hit 80s/90s show Murder, She Wrote, starring 3-time Academy Award nominee and 5-time Tony Award winner Miss Angela Lansbury. Today we're going to be talking about Season 1, Episode 18, Murder Takes the Bus, air date March 17th, 1985. This is one of my all-time favorite episodes of Murder, She Wrote, of Season 1, and possibly so far the series. But that might change as I get into other episodes in the series. As always, how I arrived at the number 18 is that when the show originally aired, there was a pilot movie called The Murder of Sherlock Holmes. When they syndicated the show, they syndicated that into episodes 1 and 2, which is not how it originally aired. The official first episode of Season 1 was Deadly Lady. You do that, and you look at the air dates, and that is how I arrived at this number 18. Also, as always, a friendly reminder, if you are new to the podcast and you have not seen this episode, then if you are following along on Peacock, NBC's streaming app where you can stream Murder, She Wrote for free with commercials, you should go on that app and watch this episode. It's called Murder Takes the Bus. It probably will be listed as episode 19 or 20. I'm not entirely sure. And if you own the DVDs like I do, get your Season 1 DVD out and insert Disc 5 into your DVD player. And this is the last episode on Disc 5. Because throughout the rest of this video, I'm going to be spoiling every aspect of this episode. It's one of my all-time favorites, so let's get started. Alright, we start off this episode with Jessica and Sheriff Amos Tupper getting on a bus to go to Portland. Mrs. Fletcher apparently has to say some sort of speech for a book or something, I guess, and Amos is hoping that he wins the drawing for a big screen TV. So they have to take a bus because his car has broken down, so that's why he has to take a bus. And this is still Season 1, so we have not been introduced to a lot of characters in Cabot Cove that could probably drive them to Portland. So they have to take a bus. An older gentleman comes up to Jessica while Amos goes to get the tickets and says that he smell that air, it's going to rain. But we don't know anyone's name just yet. We also get introduced to a couple. The man's name is Steve, but we don't know the woman's name. And she's telling him that he should not do whatever he's about to do. And they get on the bus. The bus comes and we have the bus driver is Ben Givens, and he helps everyone with their luggage, and they get on, and we find that there's already a couple of people on the bus. We don't know their names yet, although there's a woman with glasses on and a man sitting next to her that she calls Ken when she says, "Oh my goodness, that's J.B. Fletcher, the famous mystery writer of whodunits." So the bus gets going and we get our opening credits as it starts to pour down rain. And we get an awesome score as the bus is driving around, which is supposed to be sort of a play on the Psycho theme. Eventually, the bus stops at the prison and picks up a random man who's at the bus stop there. When he gets on, he has a look of shock, but eventually pays his fare and sits down. Mrs. Fletcher observes all of this while Amos sleeps beside her. Eventually, the woman with glasses gets up and goes behind Mrs. Fletcher and says, "You're J.B. Fletcher, aren't you? The famous writer." She says, "You are at the top of my stolen list." And she says, "Excuse me?" She says, "I'm a librarian, and people are always checking your books out and never bringing them back. We've had to replace copies of your books for years." And unfortunately, this feels like a continuity error to me because, like I said, I don't remember what episode I said this in, that I was doing one of the episodes where I said that it's unclear how many books she has published at this point. And the fact that this woman says years for years makes no sense. So, and I don't know if we ever find out how many books she's actually published, since the pilot movie. So I don't know if this is continuity error. It just kind of threw me for a loop. But anyway, there's a car following behind them, and there's a roadblock. The man says that there are lots of power lines out, but the bus can get through. And the car ends up going ahead of them. Eventually the bus goes through, and along the road they find that same car, now stranded on the side of the road. He stops and rides the bus. When he comes in, Mrs. Fletcher notices that this man is carrying a gun. Eventually, they find themselves outside the Cozy Corner Kitchen, a restaurant, and the bus driver, Mr. Gillis, informs them all that the bus has trouble and they must stop. They all decide to get off the bus and go in and get some coffee. While inside, they get coffee and we get introduced to the owner, Ralph. He eventually gives everyone coffee. Amos asks for some pie with a side of cheddar, and Mrs. Fletcher asks for some tea. As she's sitting there, she wants to read her book, but she realizes she's left it on the bus, so she decides to go back outside in the pouring rain to get it. While inside, she realizes that the mysterious passenger that got on at the prison is still on the bus. He appears to be sleeping, and when she shakes him, she finds that he has a screwdriver plunged in his back. Mrs. Fletcher then gets Amos, and that's your visual aid, where they're looking at the dead body. They find out that this man is Mr. Gilbert Stoner. Apparently, 15 years before, there was a robbery that went wrong. Mr. Stoner and two other men robbed a bank. And a girl ended up dying in the crossfire. And Mr. Stoner is the only one, and one of his partners also died. But then another one of his partners got away. And Mr. Stoner was the only one that went to jail for that specific crime. I apologize if you heard that little kid screaming in the background. I had my patio door open, and because it's a nice day, so you won't hear that anymore. I closed it. Anyway, the other partner got away, and Mr. Stoner was the only one that went to jail for the crime, and apparently he just got released that day. And it was in the paper. Sorry, that was my chair. The murderer is in the restaurant. and they don't know who it is, and that's when we start getting introduced to everyone. Everyone goes around and introduces themselves. We get introduced to Mr. and Mrs. Rhineford, Ken, and Marion. Ken is a professor at the college, and Marion is the head librarian at the same college that he works at. The older gentleman that told Mrs. Fletcher it was going to rain is Cyrus Leffingwell. The man that looks like he's dressed like a captain is Captain Joe Downing, and the man that got on with the gun is Carrie Drieson. The woman, along with Steve, is Jane Pascal. Everyone establishes that they were in the restaurant, even Steve, but Mrs. Fletcher observed through the window that Steve and Mr. Stoner were exchanging words. Eventually, she finds a picture in Mr. Stoner's wallet of an old black and white picture. Steve refuses to answer their questions and walks out. But Jane answers the question for him. Basically, the people in the photo, one of the men is Steve's father, who died in the crossfire in the robbery. Steve knew that Mr. Stoner was getting out due to the article in the paper and wanted to confront him, because he was branded with being the son of a thief his whole life. But once he started talking to Mr. Stoner, he realized that he must leave the past in the past and decided to do nothing about him, because what could he possibly do? But he did not kill him. Mrs. Fletcher goes back on the bus because she wants to examine the crime scene, and she finds that Mr. Stoner is sitting in the wrong seat, that he's not in the seat that he originally was in. And she finds his book and his coat in another seat, and that his briefcase is missing. Eventually, Amos realizes that the damper switch, I don't know anything about buses, has been turned on, which causes the engine to have to be restarted and the damper switch to be reset. Apparently, Amos used to be a bus driver before he was a police officer or a sheriff. So when Mrs. Fletcher leaves the bus while Amos is checking out the bus, she finds Mr. Stoner's briefcase, suitcase, laid outside in the rain with his clothes ripped to shreds as if someone was looking for it. Steve then comes outside, helps Mrs. Fletcher with it, and explains that he apologizes for losing his temper and says that his whole life he's been dealing with this, but now he's got the closure that he needs. They bring it in, and it appears that someone was looking for something. They then realize that the phones are out and they can't call for help. But there's a CB radio in Ralph's office, and Mr. Drieson knows how to use it. Mrs. Fletcher goes in to talk to Mr. Drieson and basically says, if you're transporting jewels, you just left your briefcase by itself in a room full of people that could easily have gone over there and gotten them. He says, fine, you got me, Mrs. Fletcher. I'm a private investigator for the bank to see if I could find out where the stolen money ended up. But obviously that's not going to happen now that Mr. Stoner is dead. Apparently there's $2 million unaccounted for during this robbery. No one knows where Mr. Stoner put it, or where his partner that mysteriously got away put it. Meanwhile, back in the main dining room, everyone is still stuck together, drinking coffee. And Marion's like, how do we know, Ralph, that you're not the killer? How do we know this coffee isn't poisoned? Ralph picks up a cup of coffee and drinks it himself. She says, okay, fine, sorry. Then the lights go out and a shot rings out. Mr. Dryson has been shot, and the CB radio has been knocked to shreds. And suddenly, Mr. Stoner's book that Mrs. Fletcher had got from the bus is missing as well. They now have no way to call out because the phone is no longer working. They're completely cut off. But it turns out that Marion took the book because it was a first edition. Apparently, it was the only that there are a few copies published of this novel, Death of a Hangman, which I'm not sure if that's a real book. But Mrs. Fletcher says it was published not too long before Mr. Stoner went to jail, and she says, although the jacket cover is worn, it doesn't look as if any of the pages have been touched, meaning Mr. Stoner did not read this book. She then finds a key hidden in the binding of the book that obviously leads to the money. Suddenly it's revealed that Mr. Downing is not a captain at all, but was the freaking partner that got away the robbery while Mr. Stoner went to jail. He said that Mr. Stoner basically double-crossed him and hid the money somewhere and he didn't know where. When he went through his pockets to try to find anything, a clue as to where the money could be, he was already dead. It's then revealed Amos actually gets the murder right the first time, and which is a rarity for him. They find out that the innocent bystander that was killed in the robbery had the same last name as the bus driver, and she was his daughter. Ben Gibbons' daughter, the bus driver. He claims to have plunged the screwdriver into Mr. Stoner's back because he was sleeping, but Mrs. Fletcher says he was already dead due to the bruising on his neck and the dirt around his collar. But the captain, Donner, or not captain, whatever his name actually was, says that he did not kill him. And Mrs. Fletcher then realizes she made a mistake, because initially when this was revealed, she told Amos that he was wrong, but she realizes he was right. The killer was Mr. Gibbons all along. And the real story comes out. Mr. Gibbons confronted Mr. Stoner about killing his daughter, and he said she was just a dumb kid in the wrong place at the wrong time. He served his time and there was nothing else that could be done. He did not even apologize for what he did, and apparently he was a very mean man. So Mr. Gillis went into a rage and strangled him, and realizing that the coroner would find strangulation as the cause of death, he decided to plunge a screwdriver in him to divert suspicion away from him. But Mrs. Fletcher figured it out because there was no blood on the screwdriver, and the blood had already set into Mr. Stoner due to being post-mortem and all that stuff. And Mrs. Fletcher wins the big screen TV after Mr. Givens is lowered away in a police van. Oh, and the reason why Marion took the book was because it was the first edition and it was worth a lot of money. And that's the episode. I really love this episode because of the guest stars. Fantastic guest stars. And it comes across for me as like a cross between Psycho and Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. But unfortunately, in my opinion, making the killer kill the Mr. Stoner twice was kind of not good. I wish that they could have had two killers instead of just one killer. I understood his motivation, and I understood why he was doing it, but they could have done more. But let's go over this guest star list. We had Linda Blair as Jane Pastel. As you know, Linda Blair is known for The Exorcist. She's known for The Exorcist, Savage Streets, Hell Night, and Roller Boogie. She's still acting to this day. She's apparently going to be in a fairy tale TV series. She guest starred on Supernatural, Chicken Soup for the Soul. She was in a Perry Mason movie. She guest starred on Married with Children, MacGyver, the original MacGyver. This is her only episode of Murder, She Wrote. Shame. She didn't get much to do in the episode, but I absolutely loved her in it. And she's a fantastic actress and deserved an Academy Award for The Exorcist, in my opinion, because she had to do a lot. Michael Constantine played our murderer. He is still alive, and he is known for My Big Fat Greek Wedding, awesome movie, and the sequel, Thinner and The Hustler. He's been 180 different things. His last known credit is My Big Fat Greek Wedding 2. He guest starred on Cold Case, one of my favorite TV series. My Big Fat Greek Life, which I guess was based on My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Judging Amy, Cosby, The Cosby Mysteries, the original Law and Order. He will appear in another episode of Murder, She Wrote. He appeared on Friday the 13th, the series, Simon and Simon, The Law and Harry McGraw, the original MacGyver, Magnum P.I., Highway to Heaven, Mama's Family, Hotel, The Love Boat, The Fall Guy, Amanda's, which was an awesome show that Bea Arthur did before Golden Girls and in between Maude. And Trapper John MD, Fantasy Island, Roots, The Next Generation. So he had quite the impressive career. Good for him. Terrence Knotts played Linda Blair's on-screen husband. He is still alive. He is known for Tour of Duty, Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, Rescue 77, and Saint Elsewhere. He's been in 82 different things. He is apparently going to be in a movie that's in post-production called Best Years Gone. His last known credit is 2017's Chasing the Star. He's still acting. He was in 6 Feet Under, Walker, Texas Ranger, Any Day Now, awesome show. Pacific Blue, Murder 1, Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, Reasonable Doubt, Children of the Corn 2, Deadly Nightmares, Tour of Duty, Twilight Zone, Saint Elsewhere, like I said, the original Hotel, and this is his only episode of Murder, She Wrote. He also guest starred on the original Dukes of Hazzard. Awesome. He was really good in this episode. I liked his performance. Professor Kent Radford was played by Larry Linville, who is famous for being on MASH as Frank Burns. He died in 2000 at the age of 60. Like I said, he's known for MASH, Grandpa Goes to Washington, and Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. His last known credit was in 2004 From West from North Goes South. He was in great performances. This will not be his only episode of Murder, She Wrote. He'll appear in a couple other ones. He guest starred on A Different World, Nurses, Night Court. He was in Earth Girls Are Easy, Riptide, Airwolf, Paper Dolls, Herbie the Love Bug TV series, Fantasy Island, The Jeffersons, The Love Boat, Lou Grant, Chips, Barnaby Jones, of course, MASH, as Frank Burns, who was with Hot Lips, the original Mission Impossible, Marcus Welby, MD, Bonanza, and on the original soap opera, The Doctors. Seems like a lot of people started on The Doctors. And of course, his wife was played by the wonderfully talented and one of my all-time favorite actresses, Rue McClanahan from The Golden Girls, who played Blanche Devereaux. She is one of my favorite actresses. She, of course, is known for The Golden Girls, Starship Troopers, Maude, and, of course, The Golden Palace. Her last known credit before her death in 2010 at the age of 76 was Meet the Browns. She guest starred on the original Law & Order, Whoopi Goldberg's TV series Whoopi, I love that, Touched by an Angel, Safe Harbor, Love Boat, The Next Wave, Columbo. She played the biology teacher in Starship Troopers, a cult classic film that came out in '97. She did some voiceover work for Superman the Animated Series. She was in The Golden Girls and Nurses and The Golden Palace and Empty Nest, which were the Nurses and Empty Nest were spin-offs of The Golden Girls. She was in Mama's Family. This is her only episode of Murder, She Wrote, which is kind of sad. I wish she would have been in more. She was also in Charles in Charge, The Love Boat, Alice, Give Me a Break. Like I said, Mama's Family, Fantasy Island, Trapper John, MD, Lou Grant, Maude as Vivian, All in the Family, and The Bunkers and the Swingers. That was a hilarious episode. So she had a great career and left a big, huge legacy behind. I miss her a lot. I really do. And she has something in common with one of our guest stars. Albert Sammy played Joe Downing, Captain Joe Downing. He died in 1990 at the age of 63. He's known for Escape from the Planet of the Apes, Caddyshack, and Dragon Slayer. He was in 161 different things. His last known credit before his death is in 1989 in a miniseries called Till We Meet Again, but it doesn't say who he played. He guest starred on the original Mission Impossible, The Young Riders. This is his only episode of Murder, She Wrote. He was on the original Knots Landing, Scarecrow and Mrs. King, Heart to Heart, Knight Rider, the original A-Team, Simon and Simon, the original Dallas, Saint Elsewhere. Also in great performances, Love American Style, Night Gallery, Gunsmoke, Hawaii Five-0, The Magical World of Disney. So he had quite the impressive career. Good for him. Mr. Drieson was played by Don Strood. I don't think I said that right, I'm sorry. He is still alive. He is known for License to Kill, Django Unchained, The Amityville Horror, and The Rollerblade 7. He's been in 163 different things. He's still acting. His last known credit is Glenn, Now and Then Short. Let's see. He was in Walker, Texas Ranger. In the Heat of the Night. This will not be his only episode of Murder, She Wrote. He'll appear in another one. Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, Baywatch. Quantum Leap. The original MacGyver, Father Downey Mysteries. The Law and Harry McGraw. The New Mike Hammer, Hotel, Helltown. The original A-Team. Fantasy Island. Knight Rider, Knots Landing, Chips. Trapper John M.D. The Incredible Hawk, Vegas, Charlie's Angels, Mrs. Columbo, The Dukes of Hazzard, the original Hawaii Five-0, Police Woman. So he had quite the career, and still does. The owner of the diner was played by Miles Watson. And he looked familiar to me, so let's see. He's still alive. He is known for Cujo. Yes! Yes, I knew I recognized him from Cujo. He plays the guy that Cujo kills first. Also, he's known for Up in Smoke, The $6 Million Man. He was in 103 different things. His last known credit is Gunsmoke to the Last Man TV movie. He was in The Heat of the Night, in the pilot episode of that. This will not be his only episode of Murder, She Wrote. He will appear in another one. He'll be in the A-Team. He was in the original A-Team, Simon and Simon. He was in a TV movie about J. Edgar Hoover, Airwolf, Harper Valley PTA, The Misadventures of Sheriff Lobo, BJ and the Bear, How the West Was Won, The Rockford Files, Harvey Boys, Nancy Drew Mysteries, The Incredible Hawk, Barnaby Jones, The Oregon Trail, The $6 Million Man, he had quite the career. Oh, and he was also in the original Muppets movie. Alright. And David Wayne played Cyrus Leffingwell, the man who seemed to have bad luck with rain every time he goes on vacation. He died in 1995 at the age of 81. He is known for The Abominable Stain, Adam's Rib, The Front Page, and How to Marry a Millionaire with Marilyn Monroe. His last known credit was in 1987 in a TV movie called Poker Alice, and he has something in common with Ruth McClanahan. On The Golden Girls, he played her father, Big Daddy. This is his only, and he also has another thing in common with her, this is his only episode of Murder, She Wrote. He also guest starred on Trapper John M.D., The Love Boat, Saint Elsewhere, House Calls, 8 is Enough, Dallas, Black Beauty miniseries, The Harvey Girls, Nancy Drew Mysteries, Phyllis, which was a spinoff from the Mary Tyler Moore Show, Gunsmoke, he was in The Apple Dumpling Gang, that's a funny movie, The Magical World of Disney, Huckleberry Finn, the original Hawaii Five-0, Night Gallery, was in the original Batman as the Mad Hatter. Awesome, he had such a wonderful career. May you rest in peace, Mr. Wayne. And our murder victim was played by John Davis Chandler. He died in 2010 at the age of 75. He's known for The Adventures in Babysitting, The Outlaw Jesse Wells, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and Capone. His last known credit is in 1998 in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. He guest starred on Walker, Texas Ranger, Chicago Hope, ER, In the Heat of the Night, Renegade, Reasonable Doubt, Simon and Simon, Hunter, Airwolf. He will be in another episode of Murder, She Wrote. Hill Street Blues, TJ Hooker, Heart to Heart, Fantasy Island. Everyone seems to have been on Fantasy Island, and they never show it anymore. Police Story, Quincy and Me, Columbo, Gunsmoke, Adam 12. So he had quite the impressive career. Good for him. But anyway, guys, I enjoyed this episode thoroughly because of the setting of how they're isolated from the outside world and they can't get help. But I wish that they would have had two killers instead of one, because it basically goes backwards and forwards and makes you think that there's another killer when there's not. But I guess it wouldn't be a mystery without that. It was wonderful, and I love the guest stars. Timeless and classic. I can't wait to see you guys in the next one. I'm almost done with season 1. As always, thank you for your support, especially in my Facebook groups, Jessica Fletcher, Murder, She Wrote, and All Things Murder, She Wrote. If you're a fan of Murder, She Wrote, and you have a Facebook, you should join those two groups because they are really fun. We talk about episodes, and I post when I post an episode, I post it in there so that they can see it, and I enjoy their comments and everything in between. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and I'll see you in the next one.